Now, what is the best broadhead for you? Now, there's a lot of attention and focus, rightfully so, being placed on mechanical broadheads. And there's the heavy hitter crowd with the single bevel, double bevel, and heavy arrows. There's ultralight crowd out there. I like more of a balance, whether it's broadheads, arrows, setup, everything. I think that's really important. Bottom line is you can use any broadhead to kill deer. In fact, a field point has been known to kill deer in the past, and not that you'd ever want to hunt with a field point, but bottom line is a properly placed arrow that's accurate and you know the limitations of whatever broadhead you're using is going to be the best broadhead for you. Now, mechanicals, of course, they have their huge advantages. Bottom line is, and I'm talking mechanical that opens up completely and doesn't have any fixed blade heads. You know, broadheads in general. There's broadheads that fly great with no wind, but you start getting a side wind, and because of the surface area, they get blown around with a side wind more than another broadhead because they're not as aerodynamic and it doesn't allow airflow from side to side as much as another head does. There's broadheads if they're a little bit out of tune, meaning you line up the blades with the vanes, but if that's slightly off, they're going to fly poorly. If you add wind to it, they fly poorly. If you add a little bit of a deflection, they fly poorly. I choose to hunt with the hybrids, you know, and I'll talk about why I switched here, but I used and enjoyed mechanical heads for 16 years. I used them from 1995 to 2010, and there's a variety. I remember the old Terminator, I think it was called a Terminator expandable head. It was about a 2-inch diameter cut, and I remember they flew poorly, whichever kind it was. Back in the day, it hit the ground. My friend Mike Pratt started using them before I did, and that was before that 95 time. And so I switched eventually. I started using rocket heads. The majority of that 16 years, I used rocket heads. I used the rocket head Wolverines up to the hammerheads and all areas in between from 125, 100 grain, and the Wolverines were 57 grain mechanical broadheads. They had a nice steel chisel point on it, and I like those. Those are some of the last ones I used, were those 57 grains on ultralight setups. Really good pass-throughs because there wasn't a lot of cutting diameter on those, and we'll talk about some of those advantages and disadvantages here. The bottom line is I'm coming at this with a lot of experience in the past, and there's reasons why I don't use them anymore, but at the same time, they're a good head. Are they the best? I'm not really sure. When it comes to mechanicals in general, people use them because they fly great, they cut big, and for that big cutting diameter and the amount of energy it takes to open the blades, which has been discussed, that's anywhere from 12 to 15% of the actual energy of your bow, the stored energy, that kinetic energy. It takes energy to open those blades. That's why they're not appropriate for someone with low poundage or pushing that poundage limit in your state, because it takes a lot of energy to open those blades. And so you're going to sacrifice penetration, cutting ability, and ultimately you could take a bow that's legal for a state, let's just say 35 pounds or 40 pounds, you're going to turn that into a 30, 35 pound bow because you're using those mechanicals if you do the math. So they take some energy. They also don't penetrate as well because a lot of them have very wide cutting diameters, and there's a lot of bone that they can catch, fat, tendons, hide, whatever it might be, meat. But there's a lot they can catch on the way in that helps to slow that arrow down, and you suffer poor penetration because of that. So generally fly great though. That's why a lot of people use them. You can take, and it used to be I shot long distance field and hunter, MAA in Michigan, where you'd shoot out to 90 meters, and field and hunter we shot 80 yards, and in all those areas in between I shot professionally and competitively at a high level. Out to long distances with really good grouping. And what you found was when you're tuning your arrows for long distance and you're moving your sight around, I always found that my arrows coming out a little bit oblong, meaning a little bit high left tear away from the arrow, so it's a little bit oblong. The vanes were clearing the rest, and I was getting great flight characteristics like that. But if you put a broadhead on it, a fixed blade broadhead, it's going to hit the dirt at 30 yards. So you take a great target setup that wasn't necessarily a great bow hunting setup. And there's still a lot of truth to that today. If you're shooting a perfect bullet hole, you need the vanes then to steer the arrow. So that's why people are going to heavy helical. Feathers back in the day, they help steer the arrow a little bit more. But if you want to get away with smaller vanes, you're using more of a moderately balanced setup, a decent speed, you really need to pay attention to that. And that's why a lot of people use mechanicals. They fly great. And then of course, if you get a soft tissue hit, more in the back, guts, liver, intestine, you have a much greater chance of killing that animal with a 2-inch cutting diameter versus an 1 3/16. So there's a big advantage to that too. We'll be right back to today's video, but guys, thank you so much. We launched our seed company about 3 weeks ago and the success has been overwhelming. We've currently had orders from 36 states. We planted our food plot seed because Dylan and I wanted to get one plot in here quick. We're planting the rest August 12th and 13th. But it's so awesome to look down and see our little tiny brassica plants coming in on this side. We have buckwheat, tillage radish, peas on the other side. This has been a huge success for us, but most of all, guys, thank you so much. I know the seed is really high price this year. We will drastically reduce that for next year. I urge you to check it out on our site. We have the Big Boost brassica, our fall power greens. We have limited supplies. We appreciate your business. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to the video. Number 3, really important when you're using mechanical, if that's what you choose, that you really watch your blades and your quiver. And it might not be as much of a consideration when you're sitting down in your stand, you're putting your arrow on there and you have a blade flapping around because either the rubber band broke or the collaring system it has, it comes off. That's one of the reasons I didn't like a mechanical, is I didn't like the fact that if I pulled it out of the quiver for a second follow-up shot, I might have a loose blade flopping around because I hit it on something or they're a little bit more temperamental to that. I've seen people with mechanicals, they hit just a little bit of a blade of grass, they open up, it slaps the side of that animal at a 45-degree angle and doesn't even penetrate at all, or penetrates so poorly they don't recover the animal, and they even find the animal next year and get their broadhead back. I've had 2 deer I've gotten my broadhead back on throughout the years, and they're both mechanicals. I shot one 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, and then I shot one 10 days later, and we should probably include a picture of that one. But I shot a lot of nice bucks through that time period, and we'll show the picture in 2010 of a buck I recovered 10 days later and got my broadhead back. But those are both poor hits on an animal that reacted to the shot or hit the arrow or hit the deer in an area where there's too much bone or meat for there to be good penetration. But when it comes to those blades, you just want to make sure that they're not too loose when you take them out, or your rubber bands, you want to make sure you keep them up. If they're bands that hold the blades together, a collaring system, make sure that it's not, some of those collaring systems are so tight they're actually taking a huge amount of energy to open the broadhead. So really watch that balance in there. Number 4, you have to be aware of bone and steep angles. That one I shot in 2010, really cool looking buck. When I first shot him, he was at an angle right down here. I hit him right on top of the rib cage. It would have gone right through out the belly on the back side, meaning the bottom of his brisket area. Should have been a good pass-through shot that hit both lungs, maybe even the heart. But what it did when I found him 10 days later after I shot him again, and he was coming by the same stand, kind of wary, I shot him, and there was about a 10-inch stripe down his side. I only had one blade that hit. And what I did is I followed up real quick, and I was able to shoot him right. I just stuck middle body because I knew I'd already hit him right in his back right here, and that didn't kill him either. So I got my broadhead back that time in that animal. He ran away. We saw him running around 5 days or 5 hours later, and he was looking pretty healthy when I shot him finally 10 days later and put him down. Bottom line is those steep angle shots, and of course a lot of bone. And when it comes to bone, none of you should be taking a chance at bone. That's a big, big problem in the hunting industry right now, is people actually recommending you shoot through bone. That is a very, very irresponsible and unethical approach to hunting, that you could just use some type of arrow, whether it's light and super fast or whatever kind of head, or heavy, whatever kind of broadhead you have on there, that you're going to be able to penetrate bone, because it doesn't take much for that animal to move and you hit it a quartering toward shot or quartering away, it just glances off that bone. Bone can change the trajectory of even the best arrows and the most poundage. So really, really be careful to that advice out there. I switched. You know, you have that good flying characteristics, easy to tune. You have a great cutting diameter. But I wanted better penetration. I wanted more pass-through shots. That's why I eventually migrated to the Wolverine, which was a smaller cutting head, 57 grains. It zipped right through. I had some really good shots on animals that expired quickly and had great penetration, but it was a very small head. So I started to look at it like, if I'm using a small head, it's a little bit more, mechanicals are always more fragile. It's not a solid piece to the furrow. So I started using broadheads like the fixed blade Slick Tricks, TrueFire T1, G5 Montech. I use the Carbon Express F15s. They had bleeder blades up and down and fixed blades to the side, kind of goofy looking broadhead, but it was small and compact. I went to those, but then I missed the mechanical as far as that better cutting diameter. So this year I've used the Muzzy Trocar HBs. I'm using the Hybrid from Slick Trip, the Assailant. Really, really cool little head. Very, very solid. The Slick Trips have always been made very, very well. It's got 2 bleeder blades and it's got 2 mechanicals. And that's what I like. I still feel like I get that penetration, but I get a decent cutting diameter with it too, especially with the 4 blades. And I think it's that best of all worlds where they're easy to tune, to get good penetration, and you're still not sacrificing a lot of cutting diameter. That's why I switched. 2010, I just needed a change. I messed up in 2010 and it skipped another 10 years, went to 2020. Messed up a lot in 2020, messed up a lot in 2010, and after 2010, I just needed a change. I really did. I changed broadheads, sights, rests, bows, release, everything. I changed a lot because I just wanted to get out of that funk of every time I went to a deer thinking I was going to do something wrong. I really lacked confidence at that point, and the broadheads were one of the first to go, although when it comes to messing up in the stand, it's never the broadhead's fault. It's always operator error, because you either need to know the limitations of your broadheads, which we're talking about with mechanicals. You need to practice a lot. And so when it comes down to knowing your limitations and practicing, that should be out of the equation by the time you actually shoot the animal. I'm making decisions based on when I shoot the animal. This is what I think is going to be best, based on a lot of experience of shooting a lot of deer with a bow. You might have you might have more experience than me, you might have a lot less, and you're arriving at a different conclusion of what you're going to use. Are mechanicals the best? No. Are the hybrids the best? No. Are single bevel, double bevel, fixed blade, are they the best? No. They each have a place. They each have their pluses and minuses. We tried to score them on a recent video we had up there, where we actually scored them out and numbered them, and to try to just illustrate the pluses and minuses of each one. Bottom line is mechanical can be the best for you in your conditions, but you really have to know their limitations. I hope we've been able to discuss some of these limitations with you and brought some of those to light. Know your limitations with whatever broadhead you're using, and go into the field with confidence this year, and that's what matters most. You know the limitations, they're flying well, you know how far you can shoot them accurately, you've practiced at that distance and more, and you'll be a better bow hunter this fall and beyond, regardless of what broadhead you're using. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes so that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.